Hi, Gail.
Hi, how'd it go? How'd the meeting go? Oh my gosh.
It was awesome.
Oh, good. Oh, dang. Oh,
No,
well.
no worries. Hi, Pavel.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good. Hi, good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm great. How about you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We're in three different time zones. No, maybe Pavel and
Pavel
I
and
are the same time zone, but three different locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gail, you're 1 hour. It's still quite early for you. It's like 8 a.m., but it's good. I think Michael just joined us. Let's see. I think folks are gonna try to trickle in a bit. But how are you doing, Pavel? Everything going well?
Everything's going well. It's getting colder here, which is a big plus. It feels
Yeah.
like fall all of a sudden.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw the fires over the weekend. It looked intense.
Oh boy, yeah. Yeah, we've had a lot of fires in Colorado, but this one is recent. I actually drove out to see a friend and you could see the smoke billowing up, and I mean it was startling and definitely more and more. I mean it's not good.
No. And the one fire that was up by Calwood, it was intensely fast. It covered like 7,000 acres or something in an hour and a half or
Oh
two.
boy.
It was super scary because it was so windy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Michael. Welcome. Hi, Swati. Welcome as well. Michael, are you in Boulder too?
I'm in Boulder.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Hi, Swati. Are you calling in from Nepal?
No, I'm in the UK right now. Hi,
Wow.
everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. We're gonna wait a couple more minutes, see if a couple more folks join us, and then we'll get started. Swati, so where in the UK are you based right now?
I'm based in London at the moment. I moved here for a postgrad, but I used to work with One to Watch in Nepal. And yes, I attended the Little Big Funds fundraising course, the short 2-day course with at Nepal Community a little over a year ago.
Yeah, it does feel like a long time. This year does feel like it's
Yes.
stretched over many years, but thanks for joining us. We're excited to have this conversation. We'll I think wait for another couple of minutes and then we'll get us started.
I'll go on mute for the moment because I don't want you all hearing me type away.
Wonderful.
We had several people respond that they were coming, right? Abby?
Yeah, for sure. We've had quite a few people. I think a few more folks will join in. We could probably get started, and then folks usually kind of trickle in during the hour. So with the time difference and everything, it gets a bit tricky, but. Hi, Yomaima, welcome. It's a great picture of Boulder. It's like the home to Watson Institute.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm okay. Trying to get some rest and then recover. Thank you. How about you? How are you doing?
Doing good. I just recently traveled back to Costa Rica as a stressful travel for sure, but then coming back here and being here has been wonderful. The weather is really great. I feel like everywhere else in the world, it's getting colder, it's getting warmer here. So I can't complain. Everyone, every call I have, I tend to get the nice sun view.
That is nice. That is nice.
For sure. I think we could get started. I actually want to kind of kick this off with a quick poll before doing a quick round of introductions. So, we have Pavel with us today. We're going to have a really nice conversation that Gail's going to facilitate in a few minutes. But before I kind of officially introduce Pavel and we do a quick round of introductions for everyone else as well, I thought we could kind of take a quick poll to really see if we know anything about Pavel from before. So what I'm going to do is in a couple of seconds, I'm going to launch a poll. And I'm going to share 3 facts about Pavel. And they're all incredible facts, by the way. I still don't know which one's the lie. But one of these facts will be a lie. So take a second to kind of read the facts. And then you have about a minute to ask Pavel any questions about these facts, just any questions you might have, and then you can decide and vote. So let me know if you're able to see the poll. Just give me a thumbs up. Pavel, I guess you can't really vote for yourself, but
maybe I could.
Yeah. So yeah, feel free to ask Pavel any questions for the next minute based on these 3 facts and see if we can figure out which one's the lie. I did have a question, Pavel. What organization in Gaza were you trying to?
It's an accelerator called Gaza Sky Geeks. They have generous support from Google, from Mercy Corps. A really, really remarkable organization.
Interesting.
I'm glad it's stumping you. I was hoping that was the point.
Who's ranked 4th?
Who's ranked 4th?
Michael, are you Googling that? That's no fair.
That's a good idea, though.
But I think Michael was asking who's ranked 4th. So I wonder if you know, Pavel.
I don't, but it's in the 90 kilogram group, and I have a couple more weeks left because it lasts a year. And since we've had no competitions this past year because of COVID, my tenure is almost up. But last year I was ranked 3rd. And it'll be a little bit. I just had knee surgery, so I'll be out of the game for a bit.
Hmm. Do you have any more questions for Pavel before we make our final decisions?
I feel like there's a play on words. Maybe it was like I was ranked 5th in judo.
Okay. Well, if no more questions, we can start voting. So just feel free to pick an option. We'll see if we got the right answer for Pavel here. Got a couple of votes. Okay. There we go. Excellent. Thank you everyone for engaging. So it seems like everyone thinks that you are not actually ranked. You are not actually ranked 5th in the world, in the US for judo. Is that? Do we catch it, or are we off here?
You guys are off. That's actually the truth. That is the truth. I've done judo for 24 years, since I was a little boy, and have competed all over the U.S. and I am currently ranked 5th in the country. So that is a truth.
That's awesome.
And which one was the lie per se?
So I was not offered the position for the organization in Gaza, although I interviewed and made it to a later stage, and then they took someone else, but it was a good experience nevertheless.
It's a very convincing answer you had. It was tough to, I had to but thanks for, and you had almost fell to death walking on a bridge in Peru. That's incredible.
That was a silly decision on my end. It was an old bridge and we had a group behind us, and I thought, let me go walk on it first. And as I began to walk, the actual bridge wood piece collapsed and I caught myself on my shoulders about to fall in. So it was a good save. That did happen too.
Wow, I'm glad to hear that you're doing okay, and I'm even more glad that you're joining us today. We're so excited to have this conversation with you, and in just a minute I'll introduce you as well. But I think because we have a fairly small group, I think maybe we can go around and introduce ourselves. And something fun that Gail and I like to do with introductions, especially because Zoom introductions have been like overdone and we're all exhausted by it by now, is to just do a quick kind of your name, where you're calling in from. And then we like to do something called a 6-word memoir, where instead of kind of going too kind of in depth just trying to do a quick 6 words on a certain topic. So for this convening, we want to hear your 6-word memoir for 2021. What do you want to tell yourself a year from now about what the next year is going to be? So just a kind of vision statement of 6 words to share with everyone. So take just a couple of minutes to kind of get your thoughts together, write down your 6-word memoir, and then we'll just kind of go around and share, and then we'll get started. How are we doing, everyone? Enough time to come up with 6 words here? It's good. Gail, would you like to kick us off with the 6-word
Oh my gosh,
introduction?
okay. See, my head was over here writing. I'm thinking about the words. I love these exercises of precision, right, during this time of fragmentation. The 6 words that I would pose to myself today that are about next year are, I got to count them again. This long pause will fulfill you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Michael, do you want to kick us off next?
Mine is choose discomfort, stay curious, and love yourself.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Michael. Swati, would you like to go next?
Mine is more like an ambition almost, which is you should get on the road.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great one. Thank you for sharing. Pavel, would you like to share your 6-word?
Sure. Mine's is find a playground and go swing.
Lovely. Yes. Yeah. Oh.
Wonderful. Omaima, would you like to go next?
Oh yeah, mine is more of a specific goal. It's breathe, take risks, and apply to Harvard. Because I've been dragging this for 2 years now.
That's so wonderful. That's
That's
wonderful.
so good. Those are all so good. What about you, Avi?
Mine's a bit political today. I don't know why I feel political, but I said pandemic or Trump, we march on. I don't really know what's going to happen next year. Either of those 2 things could continue. So let's just keep marching on is what I'm thinking. Thank you everyone for engaging in this fairly kind of quick activity. Let's get started with the conversation. We have a ton of gold to learn from Pavel and share with him as well. But before we kind of pass on, and I'll pass the mic to Gail to get the conversation started. Just wanted to take the minute to kind of quickly introduce Pavel, who I've been honored to know and kind of learn from over the last few years. I've been able to actually see the journey that FindMind has been taking over the last few years and its growth, and it's really inspired me personally with some of the work that I'm doing, and I call Pavel a mentor and a friend, and it's such an honor to have him here. I'll give a quick introduction, a LinkedIn version of an introduction for him, and then I'll just pass on to Gail. So Pavel right now is the founder and the executive director at FindMind. FindMind offers systemic, scalable, and comprehensive solutions for global mental health by tapping into the power of community. They recruit, train, and employ non-professionals to provide people what they need to recover from common mental disorders via a range of simple to complex treatments in a step-by-step fashion. They've been extremely successful using this model to implement a lay worker-led mental health program in Kampala, Uganda, and have also expanded to post-conflict Agago district in Uganda as well. It's one of the most empathetic people in the world that I've gotten to share some wonderful time with and learn a great deal of, and is a big member of the Little Big Fund community, has joined us in multiple grant review committees, has guided the growth of the organization in the last couple of years. And we're just honored to have him join us for this convening. Thank you, Pavel, for joining us. And I'll pass on to Gail to get started with the conversation.
Oh, I'm so happy to see everyone here. And Pavel, thank you for being here and telling your story and your smile and your memoir. And speaking with you is always so inspiring. And I'm grateful for your presence. I wanted to start, we started off with this poll about 2 truths and a lie, all right? And we know that in our climate, in our world today, it's sometimes just amazing to me to each day start off and wonder, what am I going to be told today that's truthful? What am I going to be told today that feels not so truthful? How am I going to operate in the world around truth? And since I see you as someone who upholds high level of integrity, personal integrity around truth and truth telling and speaking the truth, not only in your own personal life, but in the work that you do, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on how this dynamic of truth telling and fact sharing and dealing with misunderstandings and maybe some lying in your work in Uganda how has that informed your process of making this Find Mine organization thrive at a time when it's kind of crazy in the world, and especially in underdeveloped countries and around healthcare?
Beautiful. Wow, what a question. First of all, thank you guys for joining, and Abby, what an introduction, and Gail, your words are equally kind. I think my effort in the next 50 or so minutes, 40 or so minutes, is to humanize myself more and not be lifted on such a pedestal. But with regards to the question, I'm not Ugandan, and as long as I live, I will never be Ugandan. And I think that's something I have to constantly remind myself, since our team is Ugandan. I'm the only white person, or Mzungu as they call it. I'm based here in Colorado, and the rest of our team is in Uganda. We have about 21, 22 teammates. And when I speak with my colleague and try and kind of create or facilitate a direction of where we want to go, I think it's equally this balance of pausing and kind of placing the brakes a little bit upon myself to not project what I think is best, or what I think I know, or what I think the truth is, or how things should operate, because I'm simply not there, and I'm not Ugandan. And the cultural differences and the sensitivities that are present just evade me. I will never be kind of where they are. And I think it's a requisite to any sort of work, I think, certainly here domestically, but internationally, perhaps more than ever, is to have that, I don't know, those brakes that are kind of always operating, and to use them more. And I think with the times that we're living in now, a lot of things are up in the air, Gail, to your point, and kind of balancing those balls personally, certainly domestically with where our landscape is, and then trying to project it into Uganda. I think that's a recipe for disaster if you lack the self-awareness to kind of stunt your direction. I think it's constantly me trying to check myself where I am wrong, and I'm wrong a lot of the time, and actually let our workers and let that story kind of facilitate where we're going. Because I think control is something I've grappled for most of my life. I have OCD, and I've had it since I was a little boy. And I think the fairy tale I've told myself with OCD is that if I create my own world in my head, I will then gain control. And I think actually the opposite has happened, which is quite ironic. By doing so, you lose control. And I think in context of work that we're doing in Uganda, it's foregoing the control. It's foregoing the need to be correct and to be right. And that's a struggle, and something I continue to ponder and work with every single day.
Yeah, I think that's something that really all leaders should should practice, right? This idea of letting go of control. Sometimes I think the more power that we have, the more we need to let go of. And I really admire that you make that a part of your, ethos and your ideology. And how, just to continue on this conversation, tell us about what you've learned working in Uganda around mental health, and what sort of the stories have been around that, you had to break through some misunderstandings around that, or some misfacts, or some wrong information. And how have you, tell us some stories about how that has informed the growth of Fine Mind.
Absolutely. I think universally mental health, mental illness is a pretty sensitive topic. Here certainly in the States, we tread lightly when we discuss it. In Uganda, we have to tread even more lightly. We're very cautious about using the words depression, using mental illness, mental disorders. We typically kind of couch it under the umbrella of stress or emotional well-being. And even going a little bit further, we talk about relationships or work, pillars and capacities that all of us and a single day kind of wrestle and wrangle with. And to kind of elicit a response and to get people to participate with us and to disclose some of these really deep, sometimes pains or secrets or hurts, we simply cannot say that someone is depressed. We try and give anecdotes. We would often have our health workers speak to the kind of the general congregation and say, raise your hand if anyone here is struggling to pay their child's school fees. And you would look at the audience and people would kind of nod their head. Raise your hand if you're struggling at your job, if you're not being fulfilled or finding purpose in that. And I think folks would kind of, again, nod their head. And that was much more inviting and kind of a general step to perhaps disclosing. And after they would hear that, we would then invite them to come speak with us a little bit. And at that point, developing that rapport, they would talk with us. Again, I'll echo that I haven't done any of the counseling, and I don't intend to, because I'm not Ugandan. I'm not going to do it. The cultural mishaps that are bound to happen are far more than someone who is Ugandan. Mental health is undervalued in Uganda. Lack of political will. It's not integrated within primary care. There are 30 psychiatrists in Uganda for the whole population of about 43 million people. If you expand globally, there's a 90% treatment gap in low-income countries, which is astonishing. Essentially, folks who could benefit from treatment, 90% of them don't receive it. There's on average one psychotherapist for every 200,000 or more people in the world. But when you look at countries like Uganda, Liberia, for instance, has one psychiatrist. Ethiopia has about 40. So those statistics, I think, really kind of scream that mental health is secondary, it's ancillary, which in some regard, in Uganda, HIV/AIDS, malaria, sanitation, those are pressing needs. But I think it's critical and essential for us to not forget that there is no health without mental health. And folks who perhaps experience schizophrenia or even epilepsy in Uganda are cast aside. They're dubbed as crazy. They're ostracized. They're exiled. And it's our work to not engage in that banter, in that conversation. And I think in Uganda equally, it's an interesting balance with folks who believe in witchcraft or traditional healers, or if a neighbor maybe has some back pain, they may say that someone has bewitched them, and as a result that they have that back pain. So our hope is, how can we give them yet another tool to look more at the biological model and not necessarily compete and kind of poo-poo their ideas of traditional healing, but just to provide something additional to that that I think has more of a biological root and meaning that we've had some success with.
That sounds so great. And it sounds like that you have, really uplifted the idea that you meet the community where they're at, and you don't want to necessarily impose something on there. You want to more like peel away and have relationship and stories and building trust. And so what are some of the other ways, in addition to the example you gave about raising your hand if you're having trouble paying school fees, what are some of the other creative ways that Find Mine and its staff have, worked to be communicators and be, trusted?
I'll give two quick anecdotes here. When I first came to Uganda with this kind of ambition of starting Find Mind, I had an initial kind of hit of this is a possible health center that could kind of play host to us. My dear friend used to live in the community, and he said, Pavel, let's go connect. I know them quite well. I actually interned for my kind of becoming a doctor. I was here stationed for a few months. And there was interest. They were excited to kind of host us, but equally, I was new. I mean, I didn't want to play off this thing that I'm white coming in from the States, having all the money and having all the knowledge, and then trying to impose something that the community may not be welcome to. So for the first couple of months, I didn't do anything within mental health. I just showed up almost every single day in the morning and was of service wherever they needed me, whether that was intake for patients who were had HIV/AIDS, whether that was registration, whether that was cleaning up particular things. I mean, anything that needed to be done at the health center, I just showed up and listened. And I think those couple of months were critical to building rapport with the doctors, with the assistants, the pharmacists. I mean, anyone in that community, just to see that I was, interested. I mean, genuinely interested to be there. Above that, we work also now in northern Uganda. Most of our community health workers are actual health assistants in health centers. So they've developed rapport with patients for years on end. They're staples in the community. So we've trained them and given them this additional tool set so they can provide mental health support. So in many ways, we've kind of short-tracked. We've taken a shortcut as opposed to me having to be this guest and trying to build that rapport. These folks have already done that. And now, in addition to them providing typical care, primary care, they're providing healthcare, which isn't a stretch. And if the community trusts them, they've kind of bought into that additional appeal as well.
So what kinds of things have you learned from your, Ugandan staff? What kinds of, how have they been teachers to you?
Oh my God, so many ways, so many ways. It's interesting. I think inherently, I was born in Belarus. I'm an immigrant. I moved to the States when I was a little boy, having the opportunity to travel to Uganda, be from Belarus initially, and then have kind of my roots here in the States. I think having more of an eclectic viewpoint of how things operate has certainly kind of aided me in this pursuit of creating Find Mind. But I think I consider myself a mutt, right? I've developed community there. There's more emphasis on individuality here. Uganda as a whole is much more communal. There's this really palpable attraction to community, collectivism. And I love when you go to a village and you see little babies, kind of little naked babies running around. And it's not atypical for someone, a block away to hold that baby, to pick them up and to pass them off, and then to do this and to do that. And I think that is starkly different than what we're used to here. And I think that really permeates the culture of how they provide care. Agago district is really remote. It's about 9 hours away from Kampala, and desolate, little support. So community is integral for them to survive. And people need to really kind of entwine and kind of get their roots together in order to really uphold that community. And I think the counseling is similar to that. They've built trust in ways that I've only spoken about. I think seeing it in person, seeing them navigate those conversations are stunning. When I sit here and I get our results back about the stories that these patients tell, I don't know how they navigate those conversations. Folks who have been taken into the bush have since come back years after feel trusting to disclose that story, feel supportive to actually engage in counseling. It's something that perhaps is completely novel. That's astonishing and amazing to me. They have a way with storytelling. I think here we in the US are much more direct. Maybe I'm not as being direct right now, but Uganda has an incredible way of taking narrative and weaving this eloquent story. And times it's frustrating to me because I want to be a little bit more direct, but Ugandans want that story. And if they're engaging in that, they'll come around to the kind of the end appeal of it, but people buy into that. There's morals, there's kind of ethics to how you speak within that context. And that's something I think I can take back home. And I have taken that in any interaction I have. I'll stop there, Gail. It's a great question.
That's a great answer. And it really plays into the next question I have is, tell us about how you then take that special understanding that you have of the community in Uganda and your team, and then how do you bring it back to us here and let us understand it? In particular, how do you use that to then fundraise? Tell us about some of that connection of storytelling, understanding the culture, and you need to ask somebody first for some funding for it. How does that work for you?
Boy, it's still in process. It's a labor of love at the moment. I actually don't think I've been as good in telling the story of our work in Uganda. I think story is led by pictures and video, something that you can kind of grasp onto, although certainly I think written word is powerful and impactful, but seeing something is far better. And I haven't utilized that for whatever reason, whether that's a lack of funds, whether that we don't have kind of reliable photography or internet, but that's something I can do better with. At any rate, I think our story actually is trying to go against some kind of held judgments and stereotypes of Uganda or of Africa, right? I mean, years ago, World Vision, Save the Children would portray these kids with these distended bellies and flies circling around these kids, and that Uganda was this place that needed saving and that needed us to come in and to kind of elevate them because they were just in complete shambles. Our stories, how can we show joy? How can we show levity and purpose and community? And I mean, all the pieces that I think we value, and to not play on this idea that Uganda is less than. So we want to show the story of resilience and hope. And ultimately, as much as we provide basic strategies and coping skills, the community, that individual has to actually internalize that work and do it. And I think that's magical. My own journey with mental illness, as far as I can see, my therapy and people who've supported me and given me additional tools, that only stops at a point until I actually have to do the work. And I think doing the work is far harder than anything or anyone will ever amount to, because that requires some blind faith and trust. And our folks in Uganda, not only having to kind of overstep this boundary of mental health is something that is deeply stigmatized and undervalued, but also then doing work that requires digging deeper. I mean, it's a resilient, powerful story that really opposes and contradicts this baby that has a distended belly with flies all over them, that's helpless. We want to go against that narrative.
Right. And I really appreciate that you're helping us to see how to balance our personal story when we're starting something, right? It's all kind of personal, right? And then bringing in others to help us shape ourselves as humans, right? But then also do the work of, capitalism, for lack of a better word, right? Or, this how, fundraising is an important part of what you need to do as a leader. And I think it's really great to hear more examples. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more on when you're sitting down with a funder, when you're writing a grant, right? what is some of your thinking around what parts of the story do you tell? How well do you need to know your audience? What kind of decisions do you make in the process of taking all of what you have and know and presenting it to a person who might not have that same knowledge, but they have something to give?
Sure, sure. A couple of things that come to mind. I've taken a much more vigilant stance in calling any and every funder. I think I've gone kind of against email because that's such a hit or miss approach. So I have started calling everyone, and that's a really kind of small bit of time that you have to kind of get their ear. And it's a balance of where do you interject and kind of introduce what you're doing, where do you lead with story, where do you lead with the ask, because you don't want to push them away. But it's been successful in trying to kind of be quick and cogent and punchy and just tell a little bit about keywords about our work. I think obviously a lot of kind of the current narrative around the world are kind of post-conflict or refugees or folks who are internally displaced or even immigrants. So I try and kind of take that keyword of that to include in what I offer, just to kind of get someone buzzing a little bit. But then if they allow a little bit more conversation, that's where I'll kind of go into a little bit more of the story. Northern Uganda has a fascinating history. It was in civil war in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Joseph Kony, I mean, the rebels would abduct, pillage, mutilate. I mean, it was a really harrowing time. And I think that only resulted in impacted livelihood and lack of infrastructure and supports, but the mental health needs have also been impacted. And I think folks often forget about that. So I try and weave this narrative of this incredible place. I mean, the landscape and geography of Agago reminds me of the Rocky Mountains. Not as big of mountains, but similar feel and appeal to it. And knowing that this incredible place exists, and just 15 years ago, it was ravaged. It was in a very difficult place, and mental health is a much needed support. That's something I love to tell, because folks who are not familiar with this particular part of the world, I think, are keen and interested in what's happening there. And then Gail, to your point, right? Story goes so far. Funders want to hear the impact. They want to hear some hard data and numbers. And thankfully, when we first started this, we had created a study, or we did an academic study with a couple of ethics boards in Uganda and also the government, and they were so meticulous in scrutinizing us on every single number. We had to show impact more than I ever thought was possible, because they needed to see that it was being effective and of fidelity and acceptable. So thankfully, that has actually permeated everything we do, and gratefully we have I think some really good impact measurements and outcomes, and we've collected all of that, so to show the quantifiable impact to possible funders coupled with story, I think that's it. And I'm hopeful that more and more funders jump on that, because I think that's a good way to approach it.
I agree. I think that is a good way to approach it, to have a blending of the art and the science, right?
Absolutely.
The real and the imagined. And before we open it up to questions from our lovely guests, I wanted to just circle back to resilience. And we've talked about that as a group here. And for obviously those that are not able to be present right now. And, tell us, like, when things get really low, right? It's like, what the heck? Why am I doing this? Why am I on the phone at 5 a.m? And why am I, when all of that happens, and we all have our personal limits, and we all have our reservoirs that we go to, and tell us something about what you personally do when you're looking at, I got to get back and be stronger again, or how does resilience play out precisely or more in a detailed way for you as a leader and as a human?
Absolutely. I'll give a couple of quick anecdotes. Obviously, the climate with COVID is a bit tenuous. I got COVID. I had COVID in late April. Tested positive, and around that time, right, March, April, it was still a little bit of an anomaly. It still is. We're not quite sure what the results of it will be, how long lasting, and that really put things a bit on pause and on halt. And I think that certainly surfaced a lot of anxiety and apprehension. And I think more so, my girlfriend got sick because of me. And interestingly enough, at that point, I was working at a grocery store, stocking shelves at nighttime. And I think this benevolent intention in trying to support the community resulted in me getting sick, resulted in my girlfriend getting sick. And I think that kind of put things in perspective a bit of, how do we hunker down? How do we pause a little bit? How do we rest? How do we kind of put things on hold a bit? And that's something I don't do as well. I think mental health as a whole, right? When we talk about mental health, it's not the absence of disease. If you look up the definition of mental health, it's actually it is stress. It is particular things that actually offset and put you off kilter. And I think it's a critical reminder for me that when I have moments when I am down or when I am tired or things don't go my way, that doesn't mean I have impacted or affected mental health. That's actually well in the purview of how it's supposed to be. I'm still in the bumpers of the bowling alley, if you will. And I think having that reminder is really, really comforting. I love reading. So getting kind of transported to a place in a book is phenomenal. I think presence plays a big part in my life. Presence, not even in the realm of, let's talk about meditation. I love to meditate, but even small things, our relationship with our phone. This is something I come back to over and over again. We have this desire to look at our phone always, or even moments where you think you've had a text message and you think it's buzzed, but in reality it hasn't. And in those moments, to actually stop and not check. I mean, I urge everyone to try that, to kind of delay or defer your checking of the phone or have a little bit of a different relationship with that. I think that habit allows me to be more present in the moment because I'm not trying to escape or avoid. I think it allows me to sit a little bit with more of my thoughts and to not necessarily place value in them, to not fuse myself with my thoughts, but to actually just realize that, whatever is at play is at play, and that life continues on and carries on. And lastly, I'll say running. I mean, I haven't run in a while since my knee hasn't been great, but running, bar none, 100% of the time is relieving. 100%, especially if I push myself beyond a particular limit where there is some identifiable pain. Typically that pain will diminish, it will go away, and I'll reach this place of ecstasy. One time my friend described running, he's like, once I get into the longer distances, it's as if I have Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad running with me. And I said, Jake, that never happens to me, but I'm hopeful that one day I feel that as well. So exercise is a critical piece to that kind of equation.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And I think too, smiling and laughter and having some levity, as you say, and for me, and I think maybe for the rest of the group, just having a conversation with someone such as yourself, right? I think that helps build us up, right? We can get isolated and we can be talking about, the weather, or we can be talking about a debate that's coming up, but just sitting down and having some conversations as much as we can through the virtual world. I find that hearing from you adds to my desire to want to be a little bit stronger. So thank you for sharing your story and your honesty and your presence. I want to ask Omaima and Swati and Michael if they have a question, they can do so.
I got some questions. I actually have two questions. They're not similar, so I don't know if I can do them at the same time.
I think you can.
Yeah, curious about what your biggest challenges are at the moment, like with Fine Mind. So that's question one. And question two is more personal and abstract. So like, say you were to leave this world at any given time, like 2 days from now, a year from now, whatever. no one knows the work that you did or anything, and you just have a little piece of paper and you have to write your 3 truths. Yeah, what would those truths be? Yeah, so that's the 2 questions.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'll answer the first. I'll say the biggest challenge. I think inherently I want to be liked, and I have a tough time being respected, and that's a tension I have grappled with for most of my life, and I err on being liked more. And I think the remote management and leadership that this particular job of mine requires, I, to my point earlier, I have to forego some of this control and trust and let our work take course on its own in Uganda. And I kind of facilitate and provide this container. And yet there are particular moments where deadlines aren't met, where communication is lapsed, where results aren't shown. And I think my biggest challenge is, how do I hold our team kind of to the fire? How do I really keep them to disciplinary action while kind of keeping at bay these cultural differences, and the fact that I'm here in the United States and that enforcing them is a challenge. That's something I struggle with just as a person, because I want to speak with you. I mean, like, reprimanding you or punishing or any of that, I'm like, well, give me an hour and like, let me understand and let me talk with you. And sometimes I think being blunt and direct actually has a place. And I'm not sure where that place is. I really don't know. And I'm curious to learn about that, because I think the work demands it sometimes. Not even in the realm of like it demands it. I think funders, right, our board needs to see particular deliverables, and when they're not done because I'm being lenient, that falls on my shoulders. And as far as it goes, I cannot continue on that path, because it's in the best interest of our people and our work for me to be a little bit more firm. 3 truths. I love the little kind of quote, this too shall pass. So let's say that that's one truth. Second thing that comes to mind is, it's a little bit silly, but I've never finished a chapstick that I've purchased. So I will say that. What the meaning and importance of that is, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's a truth. And there, I think third truth, I think relevant to our times, is smile with your eyes, because folks can't see your face, or at least your teeth or your mouth. So smile with your eyes. And I must have answered that terribly, so sorry, Michael, but those are the 3 truths.
That's your truths, man. That's on the gravestone.
Thank you, Michael and Pavel. Those are good answers. And Amima or Swati, do you have a question or comment?
I was actually, in terms of, so I have been thinking about this more from fundraising perspective. I think more because my connection in here is from from the fundraising training. One of the things I'm wondering, Pavel, is in terms of a lot of what we do, and I'm sure it's also true in the health sector. It's it's not necessarily numerical. It's not necessarily tangible. And for me, one of the things I've found not only challenging but also difficult to explain sometimes with funders and also with investors is the translation of the work we're doing from a qualitative perspective and from a story perspective to the kind of numbers they're used to seeing. What has your experience been around that issue?
It's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind, mental health as I said, has limited bandwidth, limited support. Mental health in Uganda has even less support. So it's up to us. It's incumbent upon us to kind of couch mental health within poverty eradication or economic empowerment or women's empowerment. I mean, arguably mental health kind of feeds into a lot of different catchment areas that I think funders are much more willing to fund. If you look at foundations or donors, you'll see their program areas, and not necessarily being stubborn and saying that we support mental health or well-being, but how do we do that in lieu of what they're supporting? One of the great stories that I often think about, Vikram Patel, he's kind of the founding father of global mental health, if you will. And about 25 years ago, when he was getting this movement going, he was up against a similar kind of hurdle. The mental health isn't being given the attention. How do we actually get it on what we want to do? And he jumped on HIV/AIDS. There was so much money being poured into that. I mean, a tremendous amount. So he started looking at HIV/AIDS and essentially slowly kind of chipping away and saying that, well, folks who are struggling with AIDS also have impacted mental health. So he got money funneled to HIV/AIDS, but started doing within that. And that slowly kind of started to build this groundswell, and the snowball slowly kind of started falling off the mountain. So in many ways, I think it's facilitating that conversation of how do you speak about what you do in terms of what the funder allows. And I'm not saying kind of be manipulative, but I think having kind of adept and skillful storytelling is a must. And to your point, right, funders also want to see impact and quantifiable impact. And thankfully, at least within mental health, I'm not entirely sure what you're involved in. I'd love to hear. It's actually easier to quantify someone's mental health. We use particular questionnaires to actually gauge how someone is improving. And we could, session by session, have a numerical value that shows someone's improvement. That's not the full story because it still requires the quality of what they undergone, the details of that session. But we can piece those two together. And I think we can show some of those percents and some of those average values and decreases in conjunction with that story. So I would urge you to find some sort of metric that you can kind of latch onto and actually ask that funder. I mean, most of these kind of up and coming fields, I think they'll be with you. They'll be eager to have that conversation with you if you pose the question of, I'm not entirely sure how to show this impact. Maybe you can have that conversation with me of what you are looking for so we can tailor our work for that. Because I think to your point, doing that work, approaching them, and then them kind of pushing you aside is a shame. And it's a waste of your time. But if you can engage them early on and see what they say, I mean, it'll certainly satiate their need for that, but also kind of make sure that your resources aren't being put to waste.
And didn't you also, just to interject here, did you at some point have a specific ask to hire somebody or to get a sort of data analysis process in place that became a project that you sought funds for, and then that outside group helped you? Like, can you say a little bit more about that chicken and egg kind of thing?
Sure. So monitoring and evaluation, obviously that's a critical piece. And what we learned from our community is that they wanted someone there who could keep our staff accountable. So as far as me doing it, sure, I could do it, but I think that isn't filling the need that they were asking for. So this particular person, he calls our staff on a typical basis, on a daily basis, make sure that they're actually doing the work that they're pledging to do, and then collects that data and gets sent to me. People in our community who support our work equally want to see how their money is being supported. So they're much more apt to fund something that's going to show how their dollars are being put to good use. So that's something that was in fact supported because they wanted to actually validate that our work was being impactful. And to Gail's point, right, monitoring is a cornerstone. It's kind of the lifeblood to anything that we'll do. And I think baking it in early on is pressing. It's critical. Now not only for the funders, but I think it'll actually make you feel more confident to speak about your work because you'll have, justifiable evidence to go off of. I'll pause there.
Thank you. Thank you. Omaima, do you have a question? We have a few minutes left.
Yeah, actually, I have two questions. One is technical and the other is a little bit personal. So for the technical one, how do you challenge your contributors, be it volunteers or your funders or your team or even the community that you're serving to be more involved in the work that you're doing? And the second question is, speaking of metrics, working on the mental health requires a huge energy. And we know that the anatomy of mental health cannot be framed. So you cannot recharge by giving a certain amount of, I don't know, services to a community that you're serving and all that. And we're all human beings. So my question is mainly, have you ever reached a certain point of non-clarity about your own mental health or your intimate surroundings? And if so, were you able to give a certain I don't know, amount of clarity of the non-clarity that you have to your team or to your community and the services that you offer to the people in Uganda, and still you were able to succeed in that?
Love that question. I'll start with the second part to that. When I initially kind of had this idea, let's use peer lay workers to provide mental health services. I made a pledge to myself that I am going to go to Uganda and live there for a year. And I remember having this conversation with Gail. I was so determined. I'm going to be there for a year. I'm going to live off of a meager, stipend and really far from the work, isolated by myself. I mean, really as minimalist as possible. And within 3 months, I burned out. I was dead tired. I was lonely. I felt lost. I had really little to give. So at that point, I had to make the call, and I actually came back. I came back home, came back to Colorado, and essentially put our work on pause, and said that I need to recuperate and kind of have a season of being fallow a little bit, and to be with friends and community and to rest. And thankfully that certainly re-energized myself and I dove back into it. But I think it's critical to share that with your team. I'm a believer that folks who run such organizations, I think like us, or who involve ourselves in such intimate work, to have a facade that everything is well, I think only lends to distrust and fractured relationships and fractured work. I don't think you need to kind of cry on their shoulder, but I think being transparent and candid, that only grooms relationships. And I think to your point, our work is regarding mental health. If I can't be a model of someone who can discuss mental health or my mental health concerns or problems, then what am I doing? And how can I ask our team to actually do that as well? The second part to it was how do we involve the community or our volunteers? We have a big project here we're trying to iron out with Rotary. We have Rotary clubs in Uganda, Rotary clubs here in the US. And because I'm not a part of the community and our Rotary clubs are actually far removed and transportation is limited with COVID, we've actually, one of the caveats to them is to create something they call a Rotary Community Core. And that pieces together community members, folks who have a vested stake in the community, and those folks are actually meeting on our behalf, having conversations, consultative meetings, discussing our plans, looking at our budget. I mean, really having those conversations that I think are critical to any type of work succeeding. So the community is doing that. We've kind of identified those folks, but they continue to have those conversations without us. I'll leave with one last comment. Donors, friends and family, that's typically where you'll start first. Arguably, unless you have some kind of inroads with the foundation, but I highly recommend starting with friends and family. First year, they'll give a particular amount, but as you continue on, fomenting and building that relationship, ask them to give more, whether that's $25 more, $50 more. if you could, continue on with that relationship with them for that year, that shouldn't be much of a stretch. But if you add up $25, $50 more per 20 donors that give to you, all of a sudden you have a substantial chunk of money that you didn't have prior. And I think they would be much more apt to do that if you continue with those touch points and you, in fact, show them the story and the impact of what you're doing. So I would say be a little bit more brash in that and ask for that. And if they say no, they say no. But there's no harm in asking. I think you'd be surprised how many folks would just level up a little bit in that support.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, what a lovely, lovely hour it has been. And it's just gone by so quickly. I find that, Pavel, you're such a wonderful speaker and so accessible. And there's not any sense of, I'm the greatest, I know what I'm doing kind of thing. But at the same time, that humility is informed by experience and knowledge and trial and error. And I find you to be a wonderful leader and mentor for those that were smart enough to come to this session today. And I hope that you'll at some point maybe want to join us again. I think that we have learned a lot listening to you. It's been a lovely conversation. I don't know if Abhi wants to finish and say anything at the end, but I want to be respectful of our time. It's been an hour. Thank you so much, Pavel.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Pavel, for joining us, and we'll stay connected. Pavel, as I said, is a big part of a lot of Little Big Fun's programming and work. So we hope to stay connected and follow your work. And thank you for some inspiring nuggets that I personally am definitely taking with me, and I hope that everyone else is able to as well. And I know we're recording this, so hopefully we'll share with the other participants who weren't able to join us today. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Omaima. Thanks, Pavel, for joining us. And thank you, Gail, for leading the conversation.
Completely. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. I really appreciate it.
Be well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.